Okay, joining us this morning is old Halean, who's had quite a remarkable cricket career since he left school, is Marcus Stoinis. Now, Marcus has been a fixture in the Australian one-day team for quite some time, the T20 team, the Big Bash, the IPLs, also played in England. So, Marcus, firstly, thanks for joining us this morning, mate.
Thanks for having me. Odd times, I'm sure, for everyone home from school.
Absolutely. Now, joining us is Simon Hunt, our deputy at senior school, who you knew was there when you were at school. We just found out. And then two of our first 11 cricketers. We've got James Scarborough lad, who's our vice captain, and Matthew, our captain, who is a Suvi lad, which I believe is where you are playing now. So what I'll do is I'll let the boys kind of go for it, ask you some questions, and we'll just see where it takes us.
No worries.
All right, I'll start off. So can you tell us a bit about the sports you played as a teenager, both in the community and for Hale?
So as a teenager, for Hale, I played cricket and footy, the usual combo, I reckon. But then outside of school, I was always still playing for either Scarborough or Kareen, where I played my footy and that sort of thing. Played a heap of tennis, soccer, swimming, all of it sort of thing. I think it's pretty important to just play as much as you can of everything. And then I didn't sort of take cricket too seriously until, not too seriously, but it got a lot more serious once I left school.
Yeah, so obviously house sport at Hale was pretty big. What house are you in and what memories do you have of playing house sport?
I was at Riley House. Now, I don't have many memories of certain games or anything like that, but by far, and it's going to be a common theme for me with some of the questions, I reckon, is it's the only time you get to play with your best mates, whether they actually play cricket or they actually play footy, but come house sport, they all enroll in the same thing, and you just have a ball. So one of my probably pitfalls as a character is I'm way too competitive. So I remember I'd always get told off by some of the teachers, tackling like a year 10 when I was in year 12 and calling out holding the ball and the umpire would tell me off. So they're my main memories.
Playing PSA sport for Hale, does a particular win stick out that you remember, and why do you still remember it to this day?
Yeah, again, no particular wins. It's just more, I remember a heap of Darlow cricket. I loved Darlow cricket. It's still dead set one of the most fun games like I've ever been a part of is just playing Darlow cricket. You got your mates. I remember having Lockie Jepp, this little chubby wicket keeper, and I'd sit at slips and he'd be chirping all day. And then I'd have Josh Lauren next to me and Dane Hallett-Petty at the third slip, and we'd just be giving each other shit because Josh probably got a duck. He had the worst Darlow season of all time. So it was more just all of that. All the boys, you'd have Friday afternoon off. We'd go into the prefect's office. None of the other boys were prefects apart from me, so I'd let them into the office and we'd cook our food. They weren't as gifted off the field as I was. I was also smart, but they weren't one of me.
So, did you have a favourite Hale teacher one that had a great influence on you?
I had a couple that I wouldn't know. I don't know if they've made a big influence on me, but is Mr. Walsh still there?
He left yesterday. Geography?
Is he there?
He left yesterday.
He had his last day yesterday. He's starting at Penrose next term, but yeah.
Yeah, he was one of my favourites. He taught me geography, and I had him in footy as well. But he was a classic. He always took the piss out of me pretty much. So I actually had a really good relationship with him, and that sort of helped in the classroom as well. And then Mr. Piggott, Ross Piggott, is he still there?
Yeah.
Yeah. He used to, real nerd, and loved his left arm swing bowling. And he tried to tell me, oh, Stoiny, I used to play a little bit and I can swing him back down the line. And I've also got an off cutter. And then we played him one day in Old Boys or against the teachers or something like that. And I hit him for the biggest six you have ever seen over the DT centre. I told him to go.
Yeah, he still coaches the seconds and does the same thing.
Oh, no good. but he's a good man. That was good fun.
He's got one of your shirts hanging in the Riley office. He's now head of Riley.
Head of Riley.
Yeah, and he's got your one of your shirts hanging on the office wall.
Oh,
so there you go.
Oh, I might have to going a few more.
I'll probably take it off after you heard that story, but that's all right.
His bowling's no good.
James.
Right, I'll jump in now. During you started working your way through the state cricket pathway. You represented WA in under 17s, under 19s, and then playing for Australia in the under 19s 2008 World Cup. What did it feel like representing your country, and what were your memories from the tournament?
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. It was firstly, it was a long time ago, but I remember I was the only one from Western Australia there, which was an odd feeling because it was the first time I'd played in a team and really had no idea who anyone was. And you go over there and you're away from home for probably a good month or so. So I remember that being the first challenge that I faced. And just the fact of everyone's there trying to do their best, obviously, and you want to impress, and it's your first chance to play for Australia as such. So I remember it was a different kind of pressure. But then, look, what are the memories? I remember we didn't go too well. I remember rooming with Phil Hughes, and I wasn't playing at this stage. And Hughesy was the vice captain, and he went into the team meeting with the coaches, and he pretty much convinced them to pick me in the next game. So he came back to the room screaming and shouting. He bought a couple of beers over, and we sat and had a beer and celebrated the fact that he got me into the team to have a crack. So that was probably one of the best memories I've got of Hughesy in general, but then of that tour.
Yeah. Well, one day and Shield debut came in that same season for WA. You were climbing the cricket ladder very quickly before you hit a bit of a rough patch, which led to you moving to Victoria to try further opportunities. What did you learn about yourself during that time, which motivated you to firstly move interstate and then to persist your quest to the top?
Yeah, that was probably would be the most important part of my career by far. It was a blessing, I think, losing my contract with WA. I was still young. I was probably 20 years old, I reckon. But yeah, so I was at a stage where I'm sure you guys will experience similar things. All your mates are saying, oh, Stoinis not going to make it in cricket, or he's going to go be a personal trainer, or he's at uni and he's going to be in finance. And you've got your good mates that are supporting you, then you've got the ones that are sort of in the background saying their little things. And I swear to God, I still remember them. And I unfortunately, I still can't. I use that as motivation now. So yeah, but the biggest things I learned about myself, and that I was thinking about what I wanted to say when I was coming on this, and what I would say to kids at school now is the only thing that matters is you just have to keep working. That is 100% the only thing that matters. If you are competitive, don't let anyone tell you you're too competitive. There is no such thing, because anyone that I've seen that is great at what they do, they are so unbelievably competitive. And whatever it is, if we got on a treadmill now, we all got on a treadmill, you might beat me, but I would go until I pass out. And it's just a trait that I've got. I always want to win. I always want to keep going. I remember losing my contract, and I stayed in Perth for 2 years or a year and a half without a contract. And I remember after that, I spoke to my old man. I said, I think it's time to leave. I think something needs to change. And so we jumped on a plane. We went to Adelaide. I met with the coach of South Australia at the time, who's Darren Berry. And he said, oh, Stoinis, yeah, we'd like to have you over. You can come over and you can train. We're not going to give you a contract, but you can train with the team. I remember walking out of that office, and I said to Dad, and I was looking at him, and he goes, fuck that. You're not living in Adelaide. And I said, "Dad, I'm not living in Adelaide." I said, "Have a look at me. I'm not an Adelaide boy." He goes, "Where do you want to live?" And I said, "I think we're either going to Sydney or we're going to Melbourne." And at this time, I looked at the Melbourne team, the Victorian team, and it was Chris Rogers, Rob Quiney, Cameron White, David Hussey, Aaron Finch, Glenn Maxwell, Peter Hanscom, Peter Siddle, John Hastings, Clint Mackay. And it was just a team that James Pattinson looked impossible to get into. But the way we spoke about it, we said, if you actually think you're going to have a 10-year career, if you actually think you're going to play for Australia, which is all I thought about is playing for Australia. I almost thought, I remember when I was on sorry, I'm going to digress a little bit, but I was on the under-19s tour for WA. And the coach asked us who here thinks they're going to play for Western Australia, the men's team. And no one put their hand up apart from me. And I was sort of towards the front. I thought everyone was going to put their hand up. No one put their hand up. And then boys ended up laughing. And to me, it was unbelievable. I was like, well, how am I going to play for Australia if I'm not going to play for WA? How am I going to play for your country if I'm not going to go, this is easy? Of course I'm going to play for WA. And yes, it might have been naive, but I think you have to think like that. You can't set a limit. You can't. No. Unfortunately for them, none of them ended up playing for WA. But anyway, so I moved to Victoria, and I still spent another year and a half there without playing, not even a second 11 game for Victoria or anything like that, not even training with the squad. And that was the most important time of my career. That's where I used to be so involved in everything physical, whether it was gym, whether it was running, jumping, everything. If I thought I could run fast, I could be a better cricketer. If I could hit it further, I'd be better. If I was faster, I'd be better. And this was the first time that I turned towards the mental side of the game. And it's when I really learned more about simple things, but setting goals, simple things, but looking at them every day, talking to myself about them every day, having a really clear view of where I want to go, what it means to me, getting a real clear understanding of my values, what makes me tick, why I'm going to train every day, why I want to be a better cricketer, how I'm going to train smarter, all these sort of things, which have ended up being good motivators along the way, because before you know it, I've played for 12 years now professionally. And if you don't have those things in place, you can either lose motivation quickly or you don't have a clear direction of where you're going, or you can, whatever it is, it's too easy to go off track. There's too many things that will take you off track. So they're the things that I got forced to learn through that period where I was probably as lost as I've been in my life, but it ended up being the best thing for me.
Mm. You've you're done, aren't you, James? Yep.
Yeah, can be.
Yep. Okay. Marcus, you've gone on to play 41 one-day internationals, 19 T20s for Australia. Are there any matches that stick out? Obviously, scoring 146 against New Zealand must be up there, but are there any others?
Yeah, that one's obviously was an important one for my career. Yeah, there were a few that meant a lot to me when I was playing in India. There were conditions that I hadn't been in for a while or for a long time, and it was also through a stage where my dad was really sick. So I remember going on a few tours. I remember one, for example, the night before I left. My dad was quite sick and he'd lost a lot of weight, and we woke up in the morning and he'd gone downstairs and no, I don't think anyone knows this actually. He went downstairs to get himself a drink in the middle of the night, and he was so dehydrated and down on energy, and he was so low on weight and all that sort of thing that he passed out while standing up. And so we didn't see him until 6 hours later, where he was on the floor, broken nose, knocked himself out. It was ugly. There was a lot of blood on the floor, all this sort of stuff. And so we rush him early hours of the morning to hospital. I spend 2 hours there at hospital, and then go home, pack my bags, and left to India that afternoon. And I 100% did not want to be there. I did not want to go on a plane. I did not want to go to India. I did not. And all I thought was, if I'm going here, I've got to make this so worth it. So those innings and what ended up happening on that tour is I did really well personally. And I proved a lot to myself, and it meant a lot because I was missing a crucial time at home. And also you realise, like what I was saying before, you can do all the physical training you want, but that's when they talk about mental toughness or whatever it is, your ability to lock in a task, your ability to get the most out of yourself when you feel like you can't. I think that was probably the most rewarding tour for me.
Yeah.
So onto the World Cup now. You would have been watching the 3 or 4 previous ones where Australia dominated, and now you're playing in one. Was there any moments where you pinched yourself, and can you explain them?
Yeah, a lot of the time, a lot of the best moments were actually singing the national anthem before the game. And I didn't think I'd ever sort of be that into that sort of thing. I remember a lot of the time I'd have Zamps around this arm and Coults around this arm, and we would belt out the anthem. And it was just so much fun because we were looking at it, we were thinking, this is an absolute once in a lifetime. We're so lucky how good it is, let alone we're with our mates. So that they were always good moments. Every game like that was a good moment. Playing against England at Lords, and we beat them in one of the round games as well. That was obviously a highlight. But equally, the whole tournament's so stressful and it's so long, and there's so much that you go through as a team and individually that it's hard to take it all in as you're going through it. So it's probably important that I reflect on that.
Mate, the World Cup didn't end up how you wanted it to from a team perspective. What were the lessons that you learnt from the experience that would help you going forward?
Yeah, I think we still, personally for me, I'm sure everyone at school would feel this as well. So say you play a Darlow cricket game, or you're playing a first 18 football game, or whatever it is, or you're going into an exam, or everything that you think that you feel is going to be important for your life and your career. Again, I just feel like we take ourselves too seriously sometimes, and we put too much pressure on ourselves sometimes, and we build things up to be something they're not. And as much as the World Cup, like I said, it's a beautiful occasion. We're so lucky to be doing it. But at the end of the day, to perform your best, you most likely just need to take it as another game. So that's one thing I'd learn if I had my time again. I put a lot of personal pressure on myself, and there were injuries that I was battling through, and it gets bloody tiring. And they're long tours. And I remember at the start of the tournament, Ricky Ponting spoke to me and he said, make sure on this tournament, he said, I'm going to personally cut your training down. When I think you're doing too much, I'm going to stop you and get you out of there, because this tournament is going to last for a month. It's not going to go, it's not a sprint. You don't need to be playing your best at the start. You need to be playing your best at the end. And again, it's easy to say it. It's very hard to do, but that's, it's like coming into an exam. I think you're best to study leading into it and not try and cram your last couple of minutes or your last couple of hours. But it's easier said than done.
Yeah. Thanks, mate.
All right, we'll move on to the T20 scene. So you've been in the IPL and the Big Bash. They've been a big part of your career. You've been franchised in the IPL, and then, of course, the Melbourne Stars for the Big Bash. What is life like on the T20 circuit?
T20 cricket, we're very lucky. I think it's changed the whole landscape for professional cricketers. We've had longer careers, all that type of thing, obviously make a better living, as some of them are so lucrative. It is bloody high pressure. When you talk about the IPL, one, the amount of fans there; two, the amount at stake personally and as a team; three, the fact that you're taking the position of there's only 4 overseas players allowed to play. So sometimes you're sitting on there and you're playing ahead of Dale Steyn, or you're playing ahead of some unbelievable players that you know when you're playing against them for Australia or whatever it is, you know how good they are. So it's so cutthroat. The feeling of every single game is like an audition for a job sort of thing. You feel like you can be sacked at any second. So it's changed my perspective, and it's helped me become a lot more ruthless with every single performance that I have. Equally, the other challenges, which are hard to feel until you go through them, but being away for so long from home and not seeing friends, not seeing family, not having a base, not having food that you like, not having your coffee shop around the corner, not being able to go to the beach, not being able to swing a golf club. I mean, they're also things that you need to get very smart about how you can bring that little bit of home and that routine and that stable environment away with you. And I feel like that's something that I've learned, that I had to learn when I moved to Melbourne. But there's some of the things that have helped me perform consistently over a long period of time when I'm away from home. And there's only one way to learn it, and it's when you get forced to learn it. But it's obviously great fun. You get to play with some of the best players in the world, so you get to learn new things. You have to be inquisitive. You get the chance to talk to people that you've never talked to before. Also, people are much more open to share their experiences. Before, if Australia was playing against Africa, yeah, you'd play against each other, it'd be hard, and you go into the change rooms later and you share, talk about tactics, you wouldn't talk about technique, you wouldn't talk about all the things that could help you improve. Whereas now, I played with AB de Villiers last season through the IPL, and after every single game, we're sitting down there having a beer together, and we're talking about nearly each ball that I'd faced during a game and what he thinks and how he thinks we can do this at training to help you become better. So those sort of things are invaluable which is all created through these 2020 tournaments.
I think that's, the game's changed for the better as a result of that. Like IPL probably broke down so many of those barriers over the last 10 years. Now, a couple of last questions, Marcus. We talk at Hale a bit about what it takes to be a team player, and you don't have to be a great player to be a team player. Now, in your dozen or so years, is there someone that you'd consider the best team player that just put others ahead of themselves to a degree that, you learnt a lot from?
Yep. There's a couple. One's Rob Quiney, who I played a lot with in Victoria. And it was always little things, but it was always the fact that whether it was club cricket or whatever it is, he was keeping an eye on all the scores. He'd send you a message if you did well. Whether it was after a game, he'd always make the effort. He was just a consistent human being. That's all it is. I don't think, I think we can read too much into having to feel like you have to do things and go out really far outside your circle to be considered a team player. I think it's about being really consistent, being exactly who you are, being humble, being willing to help, all those sort of things. The other one that comes to mind is Pete Hanscom. He's one of my best mates, and he is as consistent as the sun is rising. And that's one of the bigger compliments I could give someone. So the fact that he doesn't change considering his performance, all those little things, but it's the fact that when you're out in the middle, having a calm head, having something clear and consistent, I think that's what I consider to be a team player and a good leader.
Yeah. Now, one question about Steve Smith. I think he'll go down as obviously one of the best players to ever play the game, and you've had a fair bit of time around him. What do you think separates him from, probably every other, at least batsman in the game?
Yeah, Smithy's unique in that his ability to problem solve through a game is better than anyone I've seen. So, and you see this, like, people problem solve in terms of thinking about what the bowler's trying to do and they change their plan, but he is willing to completely change how he stands, completely change where he puts his bat, completely change how his bat's waving, completely change, where he's looking to score, all those sort of things, and he's not scared to actually do it. So it's one thing you can actually do it and understand and know that that's what you should be doing. But then to do it, and to do it with 100% commitment, that is a really tough art to master. And I think that is the thing, is to 100% commit to whatever you decide is going to be your plan and your best way of attacking something. And that's a skill that you can use across the board. And the reason that becomes so hard is because, one, yes, you've got so many voices that are coming into your head. You've got so many people giving their opinion. Two, you've got so much at stake. You can get out. Two, you can look stupid. Three, you can have other people telling you this is how you should do it, all that sort of stuff. There's the crowds watching, there's commentators, there's all this sort of stuff. It's all the outside noise, but to be able to 100% commit to whatever you feel is the best way for you to succeed is probably one of the best arts to living your life. And so that's probably one thing that I would say, is that the older I've gotten, unfortunately, the more stubborn I've gotten. And some coaches would say less coachable. But I think the only one that has to do it when you're out there is you. And so you can't take your coach out there. You can't play like they think you should play. You've got to commit exactly to who you think you are and how you think you should play. And you are way more likely to succeed if you're doing that, because you'll actually want to commit to it and you'll trust it because you've come up with it. So I think that's what Steve Smith does really well. And that's probably a journey that we're all on.
Marcus, going back to when you were 17 years old, you were a talented sportsman. You had high aspirations to go far with your sport. If you were to go back and give yourself a bit of advice now as a 17-year-old, what would it be?
Firstly, I'm not that talented, I don't think. But
I'm just being really nice, mate. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. But look, the only advice that I'd give myself is, one, to trust yourself more. Two, the main thing, and I think fortunately enough, I've got it in me, is just never give up. It does not matter. Nothing matters. You never lose. You actually don't lose until you stop and you give up. And you've probably heard people say this before, but I couldn't stress it more. I feel like swearing now. It is so true. You just can't give up. Just don't give up. I do not care how many mates have told me that you're no good. How many mates that send me pictures of ducks when I get out for a duck. How many mates that send me pictures of my helmet being taken off when I get in the head, or all this sort of stuff. They will say it. I do not care, because I will just keep going. And it is 100% the biggest thing. You just have to keep going. And you just have to love it. Find whatever you love. And unfortunately, I found that. But you just have to keep going. I had so many teachers tell me you're too competitive. I used to have to be the first of the classroom when I was in junior school. I used to have to be the fastest, the strongest, jump first, all this sort of stuff. And yes, there's bad parts to that, 100%. But there's also so many good parts. And one regret I have, unfortunately, is I listened to a few teachers. And so if I could tell myself back then, is do not listen to them. It is the best quality you could have. It's going to also mean you've got a few enemies, but it will hold you in good stead for the rest of your life, no matter what you do. And I could not stress it more. You have to just keep going. If that's what you believe in, you just have to keep going.
Good advice, mate. Okay, on a lighter note, at Hale on Tuesdays now, the dining hall serves up to staff and the boarders meat pies. It's a tradition every Tuesday, and on those days we see people eating meat pies a variety of different ways, especially the boarders. Taking the lid off, putting all types of different condiments in the pie, and blah 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 blah. So, final question to you is, how do you eat your meat pie?
I don't usually indulge in simple mouth pleasures like that. No, but usually no condiments for me, no sauce. I don't like sauces. don't like that sort of thing. So, but I do, if the pie's too hot, I'll eat around the edge, pull the top off, eat the top, and then eat the rest of the pie. So that's the only thing I got for you.
I don't mean to pull you up on something. What do you mean you don't like sauces? What's that mean?
No tomato sauce, no barbecue sauce.
On anything or
no mayonnaise, on nothing. Wasted calories. What are you doing to yourself? Sugar. It's all sugar. I'm kidding. I'm going to be dramatic there. But yeah, pretty much.
All good, Marcus, mate. We'll let you go. Thanks so much for that. That's going to, there's so many great messages. We'll have hundreds and hundreds of kids probably dotted all around the state listening to that soon, and really appreciate your time. I hope you stay healthy where you are, and we get to see you playing some cricket again shortly for Western Australia and the country, and whatever Big Bash and IPL franchises are your next stop. So really appreciate it, mate. I can just tell from looking at the two boys that they've loved every minute of this. So thank you very much.
No, thank you guys. Thanks for having me. Stay safe. I know obviously I spoke all about sport, but I actually believe that applies to everything. And it's just, that's what I'm passionate about. So hopefully everyone can take something away from that.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Good on you. Good on you, Marcus. Fist bump.